I have a question for you. Do you remember how your childhood looked alike? Let me share with you how my childhood was. I was bullied, as being labeled by society, by teachers, by my parents. I'm not good enough. I will never achieve nothing in my life. I'm stupid, and list goes on. On top of this, kids were bullying me. I couldn't have the friends. I didn't belong to nobody. But I had one powerful ally. I always had imagination. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to enjoy this interview with my guest, Justin Holland, who's going to explain to you how his childhood determined his successes today. How from being dyslexic, being labeled as a not good enough for society, not having friends, being the Commonwealth Games winner, running a successful business and sharing his wisdom and knowledge today on this awesome podcast, Life the Battlefield. So welcome all of you risk takers and truth seekers to the Life the Battlefield, where we explore the front lines of life, biggest challenges and victories. And my guest in studio, Justin Holland, is going to share all this with you. So let's dive in. Risk takers and truth seekers to podcast Life the Battlefield. Question today I have for you. When you grow up, or maybe even today, have you felt being isolated just because somehow you don't fit in society? You have no friends and they don't want to be your friends. Today's guest in studio, he's a very accomplished person on all levels, despite being labeled that he's not good enough to have the friends, because he has dyslexia. This is just a start. So today we're going to discuss what does the life look like when you're alone and what tools you're going to be equipped today with by my guest today in studio, Justin Holland. Justin, thank you for coming to Life the Battlefield.
Thank you for having me.
Justin, look, I try to make the intro as light as possible, but I can't hide my, my disappointment with the life and people around us, because as soon as we don't conform or don't we fit the particular groups, we are not welcome and we are left on a side of the road to deal with our life on our own. So Justin, first of all, thank you for coming. Secondly, would you mind to introduce yourself? And who are you today? Who are you today?
I'm Justin Holland. I'm a two-time Commonwealth Games athlete. I run my own podcast called The Path Talk Show. And also I do a little bit of acting on the side. So I'm still growing in that journey and trying to pave my way through there.
Ah, okay. See, as I say, guys, he is very accomplished man. And I'm very, very honored that I have you today on Saturday in studio. Speaks the volume of a person who is deliberately and purposely decide to sacrifice the time on weekend to be in studio. Instead, you could be with your mates, you could do your practicing on your judo, but you decide to be today with me. So for that one, I'm very, very grateful. Now, the question I do have for you, it's very, very simple. As I say, you introduce yourself, who are you today? But let's go now back in time in History Channel. Long time when a little Justin just realized that if his name is Justin and that he has dyslexia. What life was look like when you are being labeled that you are dyslexic?
It was kind of hard because I remember I used to get tested a lot as a kid, and there was a speech therapist who was testing me on my speech, but also someone who was testing me for a physical test. And I remember her saying to my dad that I'll never do anything that's athletic or academically smart because I struggled to actually put sentences together. And when I actually started school, I was pretty much bullied, and I struggled to make friends because no one really wanted to connect with me because I was weird, because I had a big imagination. I used to play by myself, and kids back then just want to be around each other and they seek each other's validation to be part of a group. and I never really fit the mold of that. So most of the playground days, I used to just try to play by myself, pretend I was like a superhero, and play all these characters. And a lot of kids thought I was weird for that, and then they started bullying me, where they gave me wedgies, spat on me, kicked me in the stomach, pick me up, throw me in the bin, and do like horrific things that traumatized me. I remember one time I came to school dressed as Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this like big kid grabbed my Batman cape and slammed me to the ground. And every time I tried to get up, he kept on slamming me to the ground. And I was traumatized by that. And I struggled throughout most of my primary school days just because I had dyslexia and a speech impairment, which is paroxia, where you trouble to actually put sentences together. And yeah, people were just calling me names all the time, which is not like easy for any kid out there that is currently going through that situation.
Yes.
And trying to find a way to fit in, and being at school too, like sitting in the classrooms, it was hard for me from kindergarten to year 3 to understand what the teacher was saying. So most of the time I was just looking out the window and just playing my own movie, what I'd create from watching another movie in my head.
Yeah.
And pretending to live in those moments where I was this superhero. I was something more than what I was at the time. And I felt wrestling when I started that after like doing a little bit of acting, it was the game changer for me, because once I started to develop skills. Obviously, I first got beaten up.
Of course, you did naturally.
Exactly. But you just get better over time.
Yes, that's great. I was recently having a conversation with somebody in this particular studio. He flew from Canada and had an interview with me here. He is labeled officially as a genius because of his IQ, like literally genius. So what he told me, his name is Jay Rice, and his interview is going to be soon out. He told me something very, very interesting, which you reinforce it right now. He says, do you remember as a kids, parents kick us out and say like, go play, and you have no friends, nobody, use imagination because you're bored. And being bored is good because imagination forces you to become creative. And this is something what most of us don't understand till we don't grow up. And I can relate to this because I was always imagining I was a big general, I was in a war. And end of the day, I end up in a war. I wasn't general, of course I wasn't. But imagination plays a crucial role in our life. And I'm sorry that, you've been bullied and, people slam you. And I bet today, this guy will not slam you because I think it's going to be opposite, right? But how did you overcome those obstacles? Obviously, there was a moments when you obviously didn't want to go into school, or, you didn't want to do nothing.
Yeah, and obviously my parents used to come to my school too and like speak to the teachers and tell them what's been happening. But I used to also lie to my parents and tell them I was making friends at school.
Oh, okay.
And I always pretend everything was okay. And when I spoke about that speech therapist before, I didn't really register what she said because I didn't want to believe it.
Yeah.
And I felt like I could do something about it. But I felt for my first step for me in order to change was through wrestling. And once I started wrestling, obviously at first I remember I thought it was professional wrestling. So I rocked up to my first session dressed like The Undertaker.
Oh, okay, I remember him. Yeah, I do remember him. Yes.
Yes. And the actual coach looked at me and was like, what are you wearing? This is real wrestling. This is not fake wrestling.
Yes.
So I did my first wrestling session in jeans. And a year later, I started to see major improvements.
Yes.
And then I started competing and I started doing really well for myself. I started winning a lot of competitions and I won my nationals on my first year of competing.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Which was great. And that gave me a lot of belief. And it made me think, if you want to be the best in one thing, you have to be the best in everything. Okay. So I started focusing more on school as well as doubling down on my wrestling. And building all these skills along the way. And I remember I was training with one coach who trained us similar to like if you were training with the Navy SEALs, right?
Yes.
And I remember there was one session, my mum and sister were there, and my mum looked at me and was like, did you want to skip the conditioning? And I thought for a second, I was like, if I skip this now, imagine what I'll be skipping in the future. So I was only like 12 years old at the time. And I said, I'm going to stay. I'm going to finish this workout. And then from that day, I never skipped training. I always put everything in unless I was sick or injured.
Yes.
And from there, I started creating a great career for myself where when I was 13, I dabbled on The Secret and I started understanding the law of attraction a bit, and I wrote a list on everything I wanted to achieve. And one of the main goals was representing Commonwealth Games in 2010. So at that time, I would have been 17 years old. So what I did, I wrote it down, put it away, and stuck to training. Trained every single day, competed in every competition I could, and started ticking all those boxes off the list to the point the day I made the Commonwealth Games at 17 years old. And I just remember being at the Commonwealth Games, just being in my bedroom, looking out to the window, I was like, wow, I manifested this for the longest time. And now I'm here wrestling for Australia and being the youngest person in the competition. It was like a miracle, and I was over the moon. Even though I was wrestling man at the time, but it was a great experience for me to just put myself out there and wrestle these athletes to know what I need to do to get to the next stage.
So when we listen this, what you're saying right now, it looks very simple, very easy. But before you be rewarded by life, before you receive your award, you need to go to the suffering, to the pain, mental pain, and maybe sometimes physical pain. But you persevered on your path. You used your imagination as your only friend, your only ally in the darkest moments. For that one, I salute you, because we are witnessing on a daily basis where we see all these celebrities giving the tips and advice, how they succeeded. And I said to myself, you can't even relate yourself to this thing, because they all go towards the goal to be the actor, right? They associate themselves with other people, while you choose the lonely path, and yet you succeeded. But you didn't succeed only because of imagination. You go to Commonwealth Games in discipline judo, right?
Freestyle wrestling.
Okay, sorry, the wrestling. For that, you need to learn the skills. You need to fight. You need to prove. You need to get the medals, the positions and everything else, points and everything else. Tell us more about that part of the sacrificing, in your wrestling career. First, as I said, first wrestling, right?
No, yeah, right. And
I apologize, I say judo. It's the same thing. People are flying. People are flying everywhere. So
they're both Olympic sports, so it's easy to make that confusion, right? But it's a tremendous amount of sacrifices you need to make.
Tell us more about this. What it takes to become the champion, so you can even qualify for Commonwealth Games.
You have to become obsessed with the craft, and you have to know you're going to make big sacrifices in terms of like missing people's parties, weddings, funerals, just to be able to have that chance to actually make the Commonwealth Games or the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Because once you start skipping steps, you're going to start skipping steps in everything. So whatever you do, you want to be the best at. But along the way, you're going to fail many times. And you have to realize that's okay. And use that fuel when you fail as fuel to work harder, become better, make those minor pivots so you can succeed. And even sometimes success is just that little bit of success where you're winning a local competition or states or nationals or an international tournament. But you have to experience many bad training sessions along the way where to the point sometimes you're in tears, where you're devastated that you had a terrible training session, or you have that one opponent who is hard to beat at the time, and you have to slowly chip away to the point until you beat that opponent. And I think one time in our career, we're going to be facing that type of opponent where we have to focus on chipping away until we overcome that person to get to the next stage. And then we have the next obstacle that we need to face and challenge to be able to overcome it.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, it's obsession and never skipping training, because I knew, because we're in Australia, Australia is such a small country in terms of wrestling. And you have places like Russia, Iran, America, Japan, where they have the training partners, they have the coaches, they have the amazing facilities, where we didn't have that luxury in Australia. So I knew if I missed the training session, I'm going to be falling behind from the rest of the world. So I had to put double amount of work in, even to the point sometimes I'll be waking myself up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to go for runs, training at the gym in the middle of the day, and then going to wrestling in the afternoon in order to just keep up with the rest of the world, because I didn't want to get left behind.
Like, you know, when I'm hearing what you're saying, it's something most of people will not be able to even fall through. You know what I mean? Like, everybody, like, let's just start with a new year resolution, right? And I was one of those people, right, where I wanted, you know, okay, 1st of the January, I'm gonna stop smoking, drinking, you know, I'm gonna lose the weight, and you know, last for a couple of days, weeks, maybe, then you just, you know, try to catch up something, and, you know, lying yourself continuously. Sacrifice, it's a big dedication. You know, it's an element in life. If you really want to succeed, you need to sacrifice it. There's no other definition than sacrifice. And today you demonstrated it, and I say I'm very grateful today. I have somebody who invested free time, relationships, friendships, birthdays, celebrations, you know, just to name the few, just to go and practice. Because you say, if I miss one training, I'm going to fall behind. People miss no one, but like 5, 6, 7 of the sometimes of some elements in their life, and they think they can catch up. It can't. So thank you for that one.
No problem.
What was your most painful moment in wrestling?
Okay, so
it can be mental, it can be physical, but
no,
say,
no, it's a good question.
I know, and my name is Mario Bekes.
It comes a time when obviously we all get into a relationship, especially our first relationship, right? And I was only 19 years old at the time, and I was on a roll when it came to wrestling. So I was living in Canada at the time, and I ended up dating a girl from Canada.
Okay.
So this was my first ever relationship. And it felt like you're in a Disney movie when you're in that first relationship. And it was time for me to go to...
Cute, by the way, I'll take you seriously. Like, this is a beautiful thing, yes. Anyway.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I ended up competing at the Oceania Championship. So that was the second last selection before the final Olympic selection, where you make the team, which is the Oceania Africana, which is Oceania and Africa. You have to try to make the finals to be able to make the Olympics. So I won the Oceanias, performed better than I ever did in my whole career. And that night I spoke to my girlfriend at the time, and I saw she was sad, and I asked her what's wrong, and she said she wasn't able to do this anymore and we had to break up. On the night that I was meant to be celebrating of winning the second last trials to the Olympic Games. And I was like confused. I was wondering what was happening, and I was like, I need to go back to Canada. And I didn't know at the time Canada was in their off season, so they weren't really doing any wrestling at the time.
Okay.
So I went there and I was trying to figure out what was happening. I spoke to her, and she distanced herself from me afterwards. And I was just stuck in my own thoughts during that time. And that's when I started turning to like a lot of psychics and reading horoscopes, because I thought I could get an answer from that and trying to find out if we're going to get back together. And I just remember walking down sometimes just broken down in tears, and I started actually suffering from sleep paralysis during that time. And I don't know if you ever experienced it, where it feels like you have a demonic presence with you that is holding you down when you just wake up. And you're struggling to actually move. And yeah, throughout that whole time, I wasn't really training. I probably only trained 5 or 6 times within that whole 2 months I was there before making the final Olympic trials. And when I went there and I wrestled in that, I felt like all the strength I usually have when I'm wrestling was taken away from me.
It's like a Samson and Delilah. You know that
Yes.
story? It's an antique story. Samson and Delilah, when she's, I remember as a kid, I was an altar boy. So like, it was this epic movie where his strength, the God gave him strength through his hair. Long hair, he could destroy everything, right? Anyway, he falls in love, and then she's been manipulating him. He cut his hair, and then he lost his strength, and long story short, he's being destroyed. And that reminds me of how it is. It takes a lot of balls to admit these things.
It does.
Yeah, are you in touch with her today?
No.
You don't.
But I know she's happily married with kids, and I'm happy for
History
her.
Channel is a History Channel, man. Don't worry. Just settle.
Exactly.
I think what lesson did you learn from that, and you can share with us? What lesson? I was like, the emotional pain is one of the strongest pains. Nobody can argue with that one. Like, listen, man,
I get you.
I was in love as well. Like, who wasn't? First girl, and we separated because of she's a different nationality, and a few days I was in the war, so we were war against each other, literally. Her people, my people, right? It's like, we never spoke again. We never will. But I would try to say to you, it was a very painful experience. Particularly when you are that age, 19 years old.
And it takes you a good 2 years to
recover.
get over from that. But my way of recovering was just through training.
Okay.
And I just stuck to training, started competing again, and started doing well for myself again. But my heart wasn't the same after that with wrestling. And I was still training, I was still performing, but I felt like there was a missing piece to life. And I remember one time I sat down with my coach, and he said to me, "You know who Justin the athlete is, but you just don't know who Justin the person is."
Yes.
So I ended up getting into another relationship after that, and through that period where I decided to take a little bit of a break from wrestling is when I had to rediscover myself, but figure out who I was as a person.
Okay.
And I started reading a lot of self-development books, watching a lot of content on YouTube, and just tried to surround myself with the right people in order to learn and grow and build myself physically and spiritually in a different path where I knew who Justin the person was.
Yeah.
Because in the past I never had that.
This is one of the most beautiful conversations I had in a long time. And I admire people who speaks with not just with the heart, but they're willing to share the knowledge. Because everybody goes with that story. My life was not good. It was not fair. My mom didn't love me. Unicorns didn't fly. Whatever it is. And I think myself, we all have that life with obstacles. And we all go to the minefield with a torch. We're going to hit so many mines. There's no day I don't wake up in the morning and, I said to myself, today is going to be greatest day ever. And my son from other rooms screams like, "How do you know? Are you psychic?" I said, I choose to believe. And as I told you, I never spoke about these things. My son was being diagnosed with epilepsy, and for 10 years, 12 years, his mother and I, every time, he has a seizure, someone takes your life, it just, so many things in your head, you can't answer. So I choose to believe that it's possible. And today you're demonstrating again. And that's the reason why I run this podcast. I'm not interested in theory. There's so many people who like to try to impress you or me, on the internet. They're shouting, "Yo, bro, yes. I do this." I think myself, man, I didn't shout in the army. I was 14 years in military, man. And I was heard shouting maybe a few times, That doesn't work that way. But you are demonstrating how. So you said that was most painful experiences breakup. You went in Canada. And then you start discovering yourself. Why did you decide it's time to Justin start discovering himself? Why didn't you start drinking and taking drugs and whatever, go partying, killing people, rob the banks, whatever?
I think there was a stage I turned to partying but never turned to drinking or drugs.
Okay, let me take the note over this one.
For me, I always got drug tested when I was an athlete.
Yes,
I know I still had that in my head where I was going to get drug tested when I was taking a break from wrestling for 4 years. I was still coaching on the side, but I was well behaved. So besides when I was partying, I found like a lot of my friends were drinking and they were crashing out by 12 or 1 o'clock at night. But I found when I was socializing with all these people, I was getting more energy.
Yeah.
Time I was free, 3 o'clock, I was still bundles of energy. I was like, yeah, let's continue partying. Let's meet all these people. Let's have a lot of fun. And I just started enjoying that environment. And then I started partying 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And I got consumed by it at one point. And
because it's good.
It's good. It feels good. Yeah. And eventually down the line, I got introduced to coaching. So I started working with Rob Whittaker and his team. So he's an MMA fighter who won the UFC championships back in 2015 or 16 against Yoel Romero. And I started sticking with training again. I started focusing on getting back into my craft. And then from there, I went into doing personal training at UFC gym.
Okay.
And I started understanding more about business and applying everything I used to watch and read in the past into practice in personal training. And that's when business started to take off for me.
Okay. See,
perspective.
When you look now back your life, let's just say, let's put hypothetically now, everybody who is watching this very moment, this episode with you, with the Justin Holland, two-time Commonwealth athlete, from being dyslexic, no friends, to running successful business. When somebody make an idea about your life, do you can say it was worth it, suffering, sacrifice, and being on a solo journey in life?
Absolutely, because I feel through suffering creates strong times, right? It builds the character that you need to become in the process. And without those things, we don't learn the lessons that we need to have as a character to evolve as that person. So I'm actually thankful for all those times, even though sometimes we look back and think, oh, what if I made this decision? And I think we've all been there. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I am thankful for everything that's happened.
There's going to be the number of the people in our life. We both agree that, my coach, Rodney Williams, I can say his name. He told me, in a March, I lost my fight and, I was devastated and my ego was playing a role. I walk into that fight I saw my opponent. He's there on the picture. So I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna win. It was like a struggle for me. It was a literal struggle, and I lost. The fact is that Rodney, he told me what you're saying right now, and that's what I appreciate. He says to me, look at this video, guy who won the fight, some professional boxer, right? I say, he didn't know what to say, and he was all cocky, and there's nothing happening. But the other guy who lost was very humble, very down to earth, and, he won the fight a few months later, title and everything else. I say, I don't understand, Rodney, what you're saying. It's exactly what you said right now. We're going to learn more about life in the moments, when dark moments we are, and when we lose, because that actually highlight our vulnerabilities, which we need to work at. Most of people don't say these things. And that's what I respect you, Justin.
Thank you.
No, honestly, because the thing is, everybody knows how to talk, how to win, but nobody can demonstrate. And that's what I say always to people when I say, all these gurus and etiquettes, how? Show me how. So what do you mean? Say, show me how. It's easy to say to you what to do. Or tell me why you want to do this. And mine doesn't work that way. Show me how. Because that's in military. You get theory, you get instructor shows you on his example, then he says let's go do it now, right? So you done this. So tell me something. You touched this one. You had a vision board, right?
Yes.
So for all our listeners and all our viewers, vision board. I would like to laugh to you, because that's how I was. When I touched bottom of my life. I was being introduced to law of attraction, the vision board, and I made it fun of everybody. And then what I did, go to that part. So tell us more about the law of attraction, your self-discovery, the vision board, how this can help the people moving forward in their lives, when they hit the wall, when they hit the obstacles, when the life is mercilessly 100. You tell them, Justin, because you've been there, you achieved the results, you had a full right and credibility, authority to share with us.
So obviously from personal experience through law of attraction, everything comes through the law of action. And law of attraction comes from the law of action. So whatever you put in, you're always going to receive back in return. And having that vision board there helps you visualize where you want to be. It gives you that feelings, and it gets you to feel exactly what it's like and how your body's going to feel, who the people are going to be around you. Get that feeling if you want to live in a beach house, what it's like. And it gives you that motivation that you need, even when you don't feel like it, to go in there and do it anyways. Because the law of vibration works to your favor as if you're putting in the work. But you also have to play the fine line of not being too attached to the outcome, which is one of the most difficult things to play with, right? Because we tend to all become too attached to what we want to achieve. But once we learn through the law of actions and being humbled in certain experiences and learning to detach ourselves from the outcome is when we're going to start seeing the results, because we just focus on today results, like focusing on winning the day rather than thinking about the end outcome.
Yes.
It's all those daily and weekly goals you'd like to achieve is what's going to help you in the long process of who you need to become in order to achieve that success. Because who we become is setting us the example that we are ready to receive the lifestyle or to achieve the certain result that we desire.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with you. But as I said, like, if somebody puts me in position right now back in, 14 years ago and say, like, let's go do again, I'll take a different path. But that stage, I was like, oh, come on, like, just thinking positive is going to help me, right? And I was inclining towards the people who told me, don't do it. And then I started realizing actually that I had a shovel and I'm digging deeper into the unknown dirt, ugly part of the life that nobody see it actually. And I said to myself, like, who I'm listening actually in my life? And I wish I could hear you, you know what I mean? A good friend of mine, Dr. Travis Fox, who is director of the movie Law of Attraction, he told me this as well, Mario, people need to go the first not to believe, to come to start applying, and that's his self-belief in life. And that's what you did. So let's go move now, so 2 times on Commonwealth Games, right? Can you just share with our audience, Justin, when you walked, sorry, not walking right now, but when you go for that competitions, what was your feeling, being surrounded like a modern gladiator, you know what I mean? So wrestling is not such a easy sport, you know what I mean? It's a very demanding physical sport, you know what I mean?
It is, and there's nothing scarier than someone that can potentially physically dominating you.
Okay.
And it's vice versa, right?
Yes.
Like any sport, you can enjoy playing like basketball, soccer, tennis, and you're just playing. But with wrestling, boxing, or any combat sports, you're physically putting your dominance upon somebody else. And vice versa, they're trying to do the same. So there's that fear element of that. It's like a survival time where you're like a gladiator, like you said. You're battling to win, to survive, to move on to the next stage, to eventually win a gold medal. And walking out of the Commonwealth Games was one of the most amazing experience I can speak through, because I had a 12-year gap from 2010 to 2022 Commonwealth Games. And walking out the 2022 Commonwealth Games, I just remember the lights everywhere.
Yeah.
audience just cheering you on, and then there was free mats and lights going everywhere, and there was cameras all over your face. So it's a matter of putting yourself in that right state of mind in order to just focusing on getting the job done and not focus on everything that's happening on the outside, and have that tunnel vision in order to go out there and compete and get the job done, which is the main thing in order to
So is that
succeed.
how you deal with the fear? Is that how you deal with the fear, that you concentrate yourself on a key objective, on an end goal?
Yes. And I also focus on like doing one thing at a time. So let's say
Please share with us.
as soon as I get there in the competition, I tend to listen to more relaxing music, or I tend to get into a meditative state where I'm trying to relax, try not to think of the competition before getting to the venue. And then once I start warming up is when I start getting into the right mind frame to be able to compete.
Okay.
And then after I've done the warm up and then I do everything I need to do, I just wait for my match up. When I get caught up, I do another light warm up. And then from there, when I go in there to wrestle my opponent, I think about getting my hand raised.
Yeah.
But most importantly, I focus on the main things. Okay, this person stands with his left leg forward. So I'm going to attack his left hand so he's unable to attack my legs. And then I build up, try to get the person tired, heavy on their feet. Then I'll try to go for a 2-point takedown and try to score again if I can. If not, we get stood back up, and I try to focus on getting another 2 points until I'm able to pin my opponent or technically superiorize my opponent as well.
Yeah. So, I can't say about you because obviously you're gonna compare this, what I'm gonna say to you, right?
Yes.
But as I say, I'm not professional athlete, never was, never will be. I compete in boxing because, as I say, when we spoke in before the interview today, the reasons why I stepped into the fighting again. I love fight. Always love to fight. But one thing I realized when I was doing my competition in boxing, again, competition, it's amateur masters. I always get advice and tips from the people who never fought in a box, right?
Yes.
And everybody knows what I need to do and how I need to do. And, you are embarrassment, you are doing this. I said to myself, that doesn't make a sense, what's happening in my life, right? So this is what I try to say to you. Do you get those tips as well from the people who never wrestled in, live? It's like what you need to do?
Yeah, but I tend to ignore that and just focus on my coaches and who are actually the people that succeeded in what I would like to achieve, because they know what it takes in order to get there. And they've been there on the mats, they've wrestled and they've competed, they've succeeded in what they need to do, because we've experienced their hardship through wrestling.
Yes.
Where someone on the outside can give you advice, but they don't know what it's like to be in there to wrestle or to box. And you would see people yelling on the TV, oh, you should have done this, should have done that. But when the crowd's watching you, you have a referee, judges there, a lot of the adrenaline's kicking in, and you have so many emotions happening at once, and sometimes we tend to miss things, and we need to know how to bring things back in order to focus on the objective at hand. But a lot of people who don't fight would never understand that until the point they decide to fight.
Yes. No, I agree with you, man.
Yeah.
So, look, what's your involvement with the acting? I can see that you're doing the acting.
Yes.
You in the latest movie, The Fall Guy, which I watched in cinema, and I said to myself, man, it was actually a funny movie. And Emily Blunt, she's my favorite actress after The Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise.
So good.
She was playing marvelously there. Killer lady. But then acting as well. I feel like I connecting acting with my personal part to learn how to speak. I was believing that learning how to in acting schools, they're going to teach me how to express myself better. But it's up by you. So why acting? Why acting? It doesn't look natural after how to say after wrestling, And then you moved into judo, right? All these things. So why acting?
So as a kid, during that time when I was being bullied and stuff, I always had a fascination of becoming certain characters.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point in time where I wanted to be an actor.
Okay.
So I was following a childhood dream, and I've always wanted to understand why people do what they do and be able to play off as a character to understand the person on how they became to be that person.
Yes.
I love storytelling as well. And it was after the Commonwealth Games, I was really trying to think what I wanted to do with myself. And I just remember praying one day, and I found an old picture that I got as a kid through Henry Winkler. My mum emailed Henry Winkler, and because obviously he had dyslexia too. And he gave me an autograph as a kid saying, "Justin, the world is yours, go and get it." I saw that after I finished the games, and then I saw an advertisement for an extras agency to start off.
Okay.
And I ended up signing up, and I got my photos done the next day, set up my profile, and the next day they gave me a call for the Fall Guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you look like what's it called, Ryan Gosling, you know what I mean? Ladies and gentlemen, because I heard the interview of Justin Holland on a good buddy of mine, Jake, on his Docscast podcast, and I said to myself, he was a Fall Guy, you know, like it was an unusual movie, I must say, because it speaks about people behind the scene, which we don't see it, you know what I mean?
True.
And most of these actors we're seeing, except I think Tom Cruise, everybody has the doubles and the support roles and everything else. As well, I know the lady, she's a personal trainer as well. She was in that movie as a bartender. So I said to myself, it's a lot of people actually, you know, going to acting because it's somehow it's a natural part. Where you see yourself with the acting? Do you see yourself in like in Hollywood?
TV series, movies. So I've done a few short films already.
Okay.
And I got to get into character, and I actually enjoyed playing the villain.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun in being able to portray a character that is outside my realm, and testing myself in the waters of seeing what it's like to be that person and build up the circumstances in order to play the villain. And I want to be able to be a great storyteller to empower people from what I've been through to what I am becoming in order to inspire people through storytelling, so to tell them they can do it too, because I did it through acting. By telling the story. That's
very powerful there.
Yeah.
That is very powerful. I must say that is very powerful because, you know, there's not many of us who understand the acting. Like I never saw myself in acting, and I'm never going to see myself in acting. You know, the highlight of my life was porn movies, you know what I mean, as a teenager and everything. I was like, oh, look, this is acting, it's not acting, right? But then I saw like a lot of movies. It requires a lot of sacrifice again. Now we see the end product, but acting is not 9 to 5 job. You know, like when I'm hearing that they need to wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, the makeups and everything else, like 3 o'clock in the morning. I say, come on, man.
Crazy.
It is crazy. Well, so congratulations on that one. So let's go to your current life. Now you are in judo. Am I correct?
So I'm doing wrestling. So I teach a lot of students freestyle wrestling, and also teach wrestling for jiu-jitsu as well.
Okay.
So I'm also about to dabble into wrestling for boxing.
Okay.
So
that's a
I
new
want
one.
to be able to help with their grappling, so that helps them perform better when they do BJJ or when they do boxing, especially when boxing you clinch a lot.
Yes.
And if I teach you how to be able to shove the person off you so you can still throw your combos, I'm doing my job, right?
That is very interesting. Yeah, no, that is very interesting. So, what do you see in martial arts today? We talk about Australia, okay? You know, do you see the people taking martial arts more or less as a form of exercising? You know?
Jiu-jitsu has really taken off.
Why is that? Tell me why jiu-jitsu is taking off. Like, I mean, honestly.
It's easy and it's fun.
Okay,
it's like less chance of being injured, and you can pretty much do it till you're 60.
Yeah.
That's why they have the right business people in jiu-jitsu to be able to market it in that way, and have a grading system where we live in a value system where everyone wants to go up in status. And going up in status in BJJ, you get your stripes. You move on to the next belt.
Okay.
And you keep progressing forward. Hence why a lot of people gravitate towards BJJ for that reason.
Yeah. Look, because I say, like, you're absolutely right, you know what I mean? Like, even when I'm going in the PCYC Blacktown with my coach, that's where we, doing the boxing Monday, Friday, I'm seeing now 2 signages, jiu-jitsu. And I said to him, Rodney, jiu-jitsu. He's like, I'm out of this, but it's on the floor lying down. I was like, okay. But it's not like just lying down. The wrestling, it is demanding sport. Yes. I saw the what's it calling, jiu-jitsu, the couple fights in the wrestling. I think myself, God, man, you need to have the physical strength. Plus, you need to think, for opponent, anything else. Judo, we trained the judo when I was in special forces in military. It was some form of the Aikido and judo, how to fail and how to defend, you know what I mean? So basically, it was not attacking, it's more like defend yourself. I have to minimize impact on the body when you fell down, like on judo, and I said to myself, God, you just fall on your entire arms, everything else. It's like, mine doesn't work that way, like you want it. So I'm admiring people who do this, you know what I mean? Why people choose the wrestling as a sport? Tell me, why wrestling?
Obviously, wrestling is one of the most physically demanding sports in the world, where, like in other sports, you can distance yourself when you're fighting. But wrestling, if we are disengaging with our opponent, we get caught for passivity.
Yes.
So we're forced to engage, otherwise we get put in a shot clock, and for 30 seconds, if we don't score, the other opponent gets the point. So for a whole 6 minutes, you're currently just wrestling for the entire time. So it teaches you great discipline. It teaches you to never give up, to embrace the grind, and it helps you to become the best in everything you do, because you go through so much hardship with the sport of wrestling. And even though you might be the best in the room, there's always going to be someone out there that's going to humble you to help you realize, I'm not actually that person, and I need to humble myself to become better, because forever we are a white belt in life, and we need to focus on growing day to day. And once we realize we're a white belt in life, we're always going to grow and expand ourselves as people.
Yes.
And I felt wrestling gave me that, was to be the best in everything you do and be humble and have that mentality of being the white belt.
Question for you. Somebody comes to you on a class and say, coach or Justin, whatever, friend, acquaintance, business partner, whatever you want to call, it comes to you and says, Justin, I can't do this thing. I'm afraid I'm going to fail. What would you say?
Great things take time.
Okay.
You need to stay consistent. For me as well, I failed at the start. So as long as you keep consistent and you take direct action on what you need to progress with, you're going to understand it over time. It's like you are just understanding the code of the matrix. You're starting to understand which each letter means. But within the 6 months period to a year, you'll probably understand the foundations of it. But to get good in wrestling, it takes a good 6 to 8 years to be able to work in a world-class level of wrestling. And to be a complete master in wrestling or any sport really takes you a good 20 years.
Okay.
So stick with what you're doing now and trust the process. You're going to get good over time, as long as you stay consistent and you do not skip steps.
That's very interesting. I'm glad that you're here today. I think the world needs more people like you.
Appreciate you.
With all honesty, it's easy to go on a podcast, with Jay Shetty, who is like, and I said Jay Shetty, this guy is a fake as anyway, but some other time other story, Jay Shetty, the guys, all these fake gurus. World needs more people like you, people who had a real life experience. You can't hide yourself, because your path is being known to many people. When it comes to the gurus, it's always this many these coaches and gurus, fitness influencers, it's always murky waters, which upsets me very much because, like, when you start digging things under the surface, it's more unknown. With you, it's easy. You can see Justin Holland, you go on a website, this is what I'm doing, this is what I did. And most importantly, you don't hiding your failures. You don't emphasize your failures as your successes. You say, I failed, but I need to push myself ahead. You were in physical and emotional pain, and in any breakup, it's not good. But not having friends and using imagination as only tool, not many people will admit this. Everyone's going to say something somewhere, somehow down on track. And today you are educating generations and generations, so the young people and obviously adults in wrestling, jiu-jitsu, grapplings and all these things. How do you feel now when you see young kids come to you who were like you once upon a time?
I think it's brilliant because I'm able to give a roadmap to fast-track their progress. And my biggest ambitions in life now when it comes to coaching is to make them better than I ever was. To be able to give back to them and see them grow to be great gentlemen or great women in their life and be able to eventually give back as well and continue to grow and see them be great like fathers, mothers, and whatever they decide to pursue in their life. I like to see them succeed in that as well. So I always want the best for all my students.
You know what? This interview, it's one of the most inspiring interviews I have for a long time. It's like every time when I see the guest over there, I always choose the guest who's going to come to me because I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about things which I can't apply. And as I say to you, you demonstrated today. I always say I come back to Rodney. And Rodney and I, we have the argument. I said, Rodney, I can't lose the weight, and this and that. He says to me, Mario, you can go to a personal trainer. He's going to give you the app, what you to eat, and they're going to blame the app if you don't achieve. In hindsight, he says to me, when we're doing it, I need to keep you accountable, myself, that you achieve results and anything else. And this is what you doing. We can physically measure, your success, from isolation to being successful man, businessman. And, I want to people give you the opportunity, inviting everybody, guys, who's watching this podcast, give the chance to the Justin on your podcast. The Hollywood people, come to him as well. You're going to learn so much through him. And as I said, world needs more people like you. Unfortunately, we can't print you there's a 3D printer, more of Justin. But this is what the world it is about, unsung heroes. And that's what you are, ordinary unsung hero.
Thank you.
The man who goes every day and train the other guys. Okay, so before we wind up, you have the school, right? Wrestling school, judo school. What do you?
So I currently collab with this gym called Box Class.
Okay.
So they're based out in Smithfield. So every Tuesday and Friday, I run wrestling classes there. And soon to start wrestling for boxing. And I do wrestling for jiu-jitsu down in Bondi as well.
Okay, my God.
All those are interested.
Yeah, like what interested. So people who want to find you, how they can find you? Apart, I'm going to put in comment section below, but feel free where can find you.
You can follow me on my Instagram, Justin Daniel Holland, or you can follow my other Instagram, Athlete Mindset Ed for education. And just reach through me there and I will get in contact with you.
Guys, today my guest in studio on Saturday. Again, this is the display of success. Why? Because Justin sacrificed it today, Saturday morning, to be with me in studio here in live, the Butterfield, to share with you that impossible is possible. It's not about me or anybody else. It's all about you. And this podcast, it is to equip you, to arm you, to show you that you can overcome any obstacles and any challenges. And Justin today demonstrated again that it's possible. So Justin, thank you for being my guest today.
And thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate you.
Thank you, Justin. Guys, in comment section below, all Justin details. Be in touch. Thank you.